And we're live. Yes, we're live. So, what I'd like to do right now is take just a moment to say that today's sculpt is we're sticking with the goblins for right now, but we're going to go to one of the bosses. We're going to go to the hobgoblin. What I'm going to do is, the soldier and the gladiator are straight up troopers for the goblins. This is going to be the sergeant for the troops. And hello, Jacob. And this is going to be a hobgoblin. Now, the way I see hobgoblins is slightly different from the current, or I shouldn't say current, the most recent Warhammer Fantasy version. Excellent! Always good to get off work. And by that I mean, I see hobgoblins the way they used to be in Warhammer. They used to be kind of the Warhammer equivalent of the Mongol Horde. They were, disciplined, strong. They were the troops that would come and wreak havoc if you happened to be in their path. They were the, like the Mongol Horde. They even dressed them like the Mongol Horde with the little fur-topped hats. That's how I see hobgoblins, at least for the miniatures as I'm doing them right now. In the campaign world I'm running, they're closer to they're money-grubbing gits, but they're not evil. They're one of the few always evil D&D races that actually have a nice, healthy, civilized nation that happens to exist right smack dab on on several of the biggest trade routes from one continent to another. And they charge tariffs, they sell little tchotchkes and trinkets for high prices, and they go for the money. Anyway, but I also have a message for Kim for when she gets in here, because Kim showed off her first sculpt of her own on using the files that are available through my Patreon. And I need to show her exactly why. Where is... I have somewhere... Yeah, there he is. I need to show why it's not a bad thing. So yeah, there you are. Okay. Now, just to show you, I did this in the Discord also, but we're going to zoom in close. This is one of the first figures I sculpted on this show. This is a High Elven Druid. And while it does have the nice, nifty little leaf cloak, those leaves are easy. It's what's called an alpha brush. But you notice there's no detailing on the breastplate, no wrinkles on the clothing. Can't tell if that's supposed to be pants or bare legs. Yeah. Meanwhile, I finished this just the other night for Daniel, for his dragons. And you can see the difference in detail that these suckers have. Let me see if I can get... Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit better. Better lighting. I mean, you can see the stitching down the side, the runes across the breastplate, around the top half of the breastplate, and the stippling on the bottom half. The runes in the sword, which By the way, actually, well, you can't read it. Honestly, on the average, the sculpts are not taking longer. The extreme detail, like that Dragonborn, yes, that one took longer than most. But on the average, it's still taking about 2 hours per sculpt. So, that's what happens if you keep doing it. I'm making 3 to 4 sculpts a week. You know, maybe not every day, but, you know, several times a week. The more you sculpt, the more it's going to become second nature to make those types of strokes that you need for wrinkles or, you know, putting slashes on something, you know, that sort of thing. All it is practice. And it takes a long time. In my case, I already had the techniques. It's knowing which techniques to use when. As I started off not having a resin printer and relying on good old CR10, and I wanted to make easier miniatures for me to print so that I don't have to worry as much. But now that I have this photon and I can get away with detail like that, let me show you another example. I'm sure most of y'all watched me print, or not print, but sculpt. Let me turn on the light again and zoom in. Watch me sculpt the shaman. Remember him back on Sunday? Well, if you look, you can see the stitching on the side of the kilt, but it's very small, and it might be too small. At the very least, you know, it might be not easy to paint. By comparison, stitching on the side of the legs for this guy is pretty clear and even. You can see where the stitches are, and they're small enough to look small, but large enough to paint easy. Exactly, Kim. And the more you play, the better you'll get. It's a matter of building up the muscle memory, you know. Hello, Carlton. Everyone say hello to Carlton. As he flops. Oh! What are you doing, little furball? Get that off of there. Now notice, I'm scratching his belly. He likes that. Unlike most cats. And now I gotta put him down. As long as I get his claws out of my shirt, Mr. Velcro Kitty. Yes, Carlton. Down you go. Yeah, he just jumped up there. Yeah. Anyway. Yes. Monster Manual. And lots of Transformers that this one has knocked off the shelves. I need to get back there and pick those Transformers up. Anyway, tonight is a Hobgoblin Sergeant. Hobgob Bob. Or Obgob Bob. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and kick it into Dad Studio. And I go to my content library. And I go and load in the jointed base mail. I click this button over here to zoom in on him. Now, this is going to be a Hobgoblin. First prop he's going to have is we're going to go ahead and give him a pretty big weapon in his right hand. Whether it's a Dow or Falchion. Let's give him a Falchion in his right hand. Yeah, that'll do. We're going to give him the classic tunic skirt. And then let's give him some pauldrons. Then we go to parameters and we go to races. And to make the hobgoblin, you'll see as I pull up the dial, it's also pulling up 43.6% goblin, 23.7% orc, and 16.0% troll. The reason for that troll was to kind of cancel out some of the height loss of the goblin. But this is a hobgoblin. It's an Obgob. I'm going to select these pauldrons, and I'm going to give them what's called Figure Geometry Smoothing Modifier. Now the problem with the smoothing modifier, if let's say I took this to 15 iterations. Yes, it smoothed out the top there, but it's also giving me some problems around the inner arm. If I turn it off, that goes away. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and leave it off. I'll smooth it out when it gets into ZBrush. Now, did I move the bones? No, I didn't. So I'm going to have to come down from the top view and move the center of the sword, and then from the right into the hand. The reason being is I'm going to have him holding it point down into the base. So the first thing that happens is an X rotate of 180 degrees. There. Now, I'm going to hide the pauldrons and the tunic skirt. I'm going to twist. Actually, I know what I'll do. I'll start off. I have an old pose save that is basically just standing there. So I'm going to hit Control D. I'm also going to go back to props and load in a right-handed something. And remove that Celtic sword. So that brings his... Yeah. Now, I hit Control D to drop him to the floor. I'm going to pin both feet. And then I'm going to drag the hips down just a little and rotate them just a little. This is just to make sure. Alright, now we're going to raise it up a bit. Now we need to make sure that we don't have this leg bent. As this leg is bent currently, it looks like a broken leg. So what we're going to do, we're going to drop some of that side to side. We're going to bend it out a bit. That's a bit more natural leg position. Now we're going to the front view. And select both feet and zoom in so that we can try and make them as even as possible with the terms to bending. Also, we need to go ahead and bend this leg a little bit because this foot is a little bit too far. Okay, now let's unpin everything. Now, as you can see, because he's canted to one side slightly, the hips are not parallel to the ground. So now we're going to select the chest and abdomen. I go up here to where it says all. And by doing this side to side, we're once again breaking the plane for the... We actually need to go ahead and unside to side the abdomens. And then side to side more the chest. Because we want to cant that chest over a little bit closer to the right leg's center of gravity, because we're going to have okay, obviously that's... If the sword was smaller, it would be right, but that's just way too big. I mean, look how deep it's going into the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it just a little bit more. Then I'm going to take the hand and side to side it. A little bit more, because I'm going to end up grabbing this shoulder and twisting it. I can deal with it being a bit into the ground. There. It's hitting the ground right beside the foot. And it's got a nice little oomph look to it. Like his shoulder is lifting up, ready to lift that out of the ground at any point in time. Now, the next thing is we're going to deal with this shoulder. If we look in the back, we see that we do have a bit of a bend back like that, but oh well. So this shoulder, we're going to twist it forward. Excuse me. And we're seeing where that problem comes from. We're going to lift it, we're going to lower it. But then we're going to turn around and pull this back. And we're going to bend this arm. And I actually have a pose saved for the left fist. And we're going to then side to side it. And bend it, and then twist the forearm. And we have our basic, unexpressive hobgoblin. However, we need to give him an expression. So I'm going to go ahead, and the head is going to twist a bit. A little bit side to side. We're going to give him a bit of a sneer. So first we need to close the mouth. Too much. Then we're going to just lower this particular brow quite a bit. Raise this one. and rotate it. Then when it comes time, we're going to be in ZBrush. We're going to grab like this corner of the upper lip and pull it up a bit so he's near. Okay, now let me get a little bit of soda. And because I'm going to give him a scale type situation, we're going to go ahead and give him the breastplate add-on too. And hello, Obunkyo. Johnny Johnny Papa? I've never heard of Johnny Johnny Papa. Well, anyway, let's get back to here. We're going to hide the falchion, the tunic skirt, and the pauldrons. We're going to export this. Into broadcast miniatures, new Obgob Bob Bod. Obgob Bob Bob. We're saving it at 100% like we did before. And we're going to hide these. We're going to make the falchion visible. And we're going to export it since it's now in position. Obgob Bob Sword. Hide the falchion and then make the tunic skirt and pauldrons visible. And file export. Obgob Bob Clothes Base. Clothes Base. Accept. And then from there, ZBrush. Now we're going to go ahead, import from broadcast miniatures, new Obgob. I'm going to click and drag it onto the screen, and then before I do anything else, come over here to edit. So now I can actually edit and move it around and stuff. Then I'm going to subtool, append, and clicking on the little star here, import, clothes base, and append, click on the star, and import the sword. Now I'm going to hide the sword, go to the body first, and I'm going to very carefully smooth this part out a bit. Same thing with right here. Then I'm going to use the move tool. Oh, no, I need to move topological tool. I'm going to grab it and pull it into the body. So it'll be easier to do our final blending when it comes time. Whoop. Frame. I'm now going to also smooth out that area right there on the side of the belly. He doesn't need that. Finally, I'm going to come in here and still with the move topological tool, make the mouse a little bit smaller by hitting the brackets left and right, make them smaller and bigger. And pulling up the face for expression. little bit of nose movement. And then this is to close it simply because we want it to print well. And that actually is looking like the expression I wanted them to have. We're going to hide the, we're going to then take the clothing, and we're going to give it a level of mesh smooth. Subdivision. That's to make sure that it has roughly the same polygon count as the body. And then move in right up here at the top. Let me shrink the mouse a bit, and we're going to smooth the top of these pauldrons. That's good enough. We mostly want to get rid of this distortion up here. And then we got to frame it back in. And now it's time. We've got to move the bottom edge of this kind of into the body to make it blend easier when we fuse them together. And in. And then make it a lot bigger, as we're going to pull the booty out. And grab the top, pull it in, and then just shrink this back down and do it to the tail end over here. Yeah. Now, frame it, go back up to Subtool, and we're going to merge the body down into the clothes, and I click Always OK. Now we go back to Geometry and Dynamesh. We're going to Dynamesh this at 768 with a blur of 0. When you change these numbers, always hit Enter after the number, or it'll forget it when you go to change something else. Actually, before we do that, we need to subdivide until it's, yeah, really, really smooth, and then Dynamesh. I was wondering why I was getting a headache. Yeah, yes. And there we go. Now I'm going to shrink the mouse a little bit and take smooth back up to 100% and smooth where it met the breastplate filler and the kilt, or tunic bottom if you prefer. And the end result is we have our base clothing on him. Now let's go ahead and smooth this out. And since it's going to take more than just one or two passes, I'm going to do one pass where I can actually see something change. And then I'm just going to hit the number 1 on the top row. And it's doing it again and again and again. And now it's really smoothed that out. So we're going to do this around here too. And there we go. Yes, anytime you hit the number 1, you get a repeat of what you just did. I just noticed, yay. Shrink this and smooth out on the corner here. I can resharpen it after I do this. I'm going to resharpen it using slash. Add, and also now I can go ahead and go to stroke. I click on the little circle, and it brings it over here, and I click on lazy mouse, turn off lazy mouse, and shrink the intensity down quite a bit. There we go. And then I can move it into position. There we go. That's good enough. That fixes that. Now, the question is what to do next. Yeah, he's a bit of a tough guy. He's a hobgoblin. He's not no weedy little goblin. I mean, come on. Where is he? Where'd the little schmuck-telly go? Oh, there he is. No, Carlton. No. I mean, just as an example. Yes, I'm coming back to the main window. This is an orc sergeant. This is a goblin soldier. See the size difference? I mean, it's like... I mean, he's smaller than this guy's crossbow. And even if we just use normal figures, you know, ordinary people, well, let's take my avatar. He's still dwarfs the little weedy little goblin. But hobgoblins are just ever so slightly bigger than humans. He's not no weedy little gobbo. He's a full-size, full-strength hobgoblin. That's nothing to do with the... Yeah. Oh, fuzzbutt. I dropped the goblin. Hold on just a second. Where did it go? Carlton, no. No, little buddy. Ah, there he is. Okay. Anyway, the point being, he is a tough guy. Yes, I'm getting old. I need to get out my glasses to find that. Now, I'm not nearsighted. I'm not farsighted. I'm nearsighted. I can see the figures up close. It's when they're far away I see a little gray blur. So we're going to go ahead and get back to sculpting on him. And it's now time to go ahead and break out tablet. Wacom. Intuos 4. Or current gen Intuos, which is probably even newer than the 4. So what we're going to do, I'm going to say that he's wearing a sleeveless hauberk, and then give him bracers. And what that means is I've got to give him a division between the arm and the sleeve and the chest. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start off with slash. Z subtract 12, 13, and 10. Oh, yeah, that should be good enough. And I'm going to draw under the arm and under here. Then I'm going to hit it with a very faint, very light on the stylus to spread it a little bit. You can see how it's spreading. Then I'm going to use Alt. Oh, no. I know. I'm going to mask off. Oh. Bring that in. I'm going to mask off the inner arm. Unmask that. And then, now that I've got that, I'm going to make it bigger. And draw on the edge here. Then I'm just going to tap it. Well, too strong. I'm going to reduce it quite a bit. I'm just going to kind of smooth it just a bit to make it less sharp. And then shrink it again and dig in deeper here. Basically, I'm just going to do a couple layers. It would be very difficult to use my usual technique here. And I'm going to smooth there and smooth there. Well, and there we have a pretty clearly defined end of the clothing. And I'm going to go over here and do it on this side. Yay! So, drop it in. Because we want to make this a nice, sharply defined difference. A little bit of smoothing. And then do it again. Then we're going in, shrink the mouse a bit, and start masking this off. Oh. Let's mouse some more. And pardon me if I get silent real quick, that's the concentration. Wanting to make sure I'm not doing what I just did. Okay. Now we're going to come under here. And with a little bit of care and precision, unmask that. Then we're going to make it grow again. And we're going to use the Alt button to make it go in its invert direction. And draw and sharpen under the underarm. Then we're going to unmask and just very gently at a lower resolution again. Take some of the super sharp edge off that. And now we have relatively clear-cut, sleeveless thingy. It's officially a thingy now. I have declared it such. And now we're going to make it... We're going to turn off the Dynamesh and we're going to give it one level of subdivision, because what we're going to be doing now is going to need a bit more precision. So I'm going to draw on the neckline. And the back neckline. Then I'm going to zoom in and erase it from the pauldrons. Because next up is extracting this after I also make its equivalent down below. Okay, that. This is going to be basically trim, both above and below the body of the hauberk. Now let's frame out, and let's increase the size of the mouse until it's about the same size as the seams up there. And then we're going to move up and center in on the bottom hem. We're going to very carefully mask around here. Oh, itch. Now what's going to happen here, this is going to get extracted out to make the trim, as I'm sure you've all seen many, many times. Or at least those of you who are regulars. If you've never seen this before, well, this is how I do it. Well, and good. Now I'm going to frame out. Excuse me, pardon me, my sinuses are going. And I go to Subtool, and down here at Extract, I'm going to leave it exactly as it is, 0.02. Accept, draw. Now I go back up to him and draw. And what this has done, and this has made a trim for his tunic, top and bottom, such that it'll actually print and show up on the miniature. Next, we're going to add on his belt. Now this is not going to be one of my style hobgoblins. This is just a generic, heavy-duty, bigger, tougher goblin hobgoblin. So we're not going to bother with trying to make him look Mongol or greedy or what have you. So we're going to just going to go ahead and just draw on a slightly off-kilter belt. And bring it up and above. The trick to making things like this belt is predicting where the ends are going to end up. It's not as easy as it sounds. And that's going to be at 0.03 thick. The reason I'm doing that is so that the belt will be more obvious, more prominent than the trim, and larger, seriously. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw on the buckle, which it's not going to be a standard buckle. I'm going to have to do one other thing first too. I've got to Dynamesh it. Dynamesh, and then subdivide it a couple times. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the buckle is make the mouse smaller. First, I'm going to draw on a rather large bar. And then we're going to make it a little bit thicker here. And a little bit thicker here. Then I'm going to erase there, erase there. I'm going to try and make it a little bit less angled. Okay. That is going to get extracted out first at 0.02. Draw, and then draw. Then I'm going to hide that little buckle bit, and I'm going to load in a new brush. This brush is Pixelot or Program Files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 14, ZBrushes, and Orb. It's going to be called the Orb Cracks brush. Turn off Lazy Mouse and draw it in place. And then now when we turn on the buckle, okay, it's in the wrong spot. So you need to be here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then make that visible. We're going to Dynamesh the square. Dynameshing, like I said, not only just reorganizes all the faces, it also unifies the surface. And I'm going to deformation, I'm going to inflate it. Then I'm going to grab the move brush and make it immensely huge. Grab this and kind of move it out a good bit. There we go. And then move it up a good bit. There. Now let's bring this back down. And then finally we're coming back up here to Subtool. And I'm going to draw on a mask . And what I'm going to be doing with this is going to be, let me hide the bar. where the buckle is connecting to the belt. We're actually giving it a function instead of just being a buckle slapped on the front of a band. Okay, so we're going to make this visible. And now we're going to extract. We're going to turn off double and then extract. Accept, draw, and draw. Now in geometry, we're going to leave it at 128 and Dynamesh. Then we're going to subdivide it a couple times. And then finally we're going to deformation and we're going to polish it by 5. Nah, that didn't do enough. 100. Relax. Okay. Now let's frame him out. And there he's got his belt and belt buckle. Let's go ahead and merge all those back together. Now the trim we do also need to Dynamesh, because now the reason we Dynamesh things like this trim, I'll show you. If you want to do any kind of sculpting at all on it, these polygons that are in green here, it's going to be hard to see. Let me zoom in a little bit closer. I think you might be able to see them now. Whoops. Yeah, they're long and thin. I've said this before about tablets, Kim, and that's that the difference between a tablet and a mouse is like the difference between an airbrush and a rattle can. Okay, we're going to make this 256, Dynamesh, turn it off, divide, divide, delete lower. And we're going to zoom out. Now, he's got his, I mean, if we do this, or better yet, let's do that. We need to add on his bracers now. And in his case, I think we're going to make them kind of relatively flat. That was a bit too far up. Yeah, be careful when sculpting after bending the hands side to side, because they do have a tendency to look muppety. Okay. And I will admit that is my rigging that did that. That made them muppety. And just a little bit erased here to make it a little bit more balanced. There we go. That's the right bracer. And then the left bracer will be a lot more difficult because it's got bits that are going to be going into the bicep. Now zoom in and erase a good bit and shrink the mouse. What you just saw where it said saving file in progress, that's the autosave. I'll be honest, autosave really hasn't saved me ever because it does not do what's called an incremental save. Once I've added these bracers, I'll show you the easiest way to save what you're working on if you have to close the computer, or, you know, just for the sake of making sure you don't lose work. Like working in a thunderstorm, you know, the brilliance that I have done before. Okay. And now I can go ahead and close this up. And by doing this, we got the other arms bracer once I finish filling in the masking area. And there we go. Frame out. And now we're going to extract at 0.3, which is what it's currently set at. So extract, accept, draw, draw. Now, to make sure that you're doing that, you have the best way to save a project when you're in mid sculpt is actually to come up here to where it says save as. Don't go to document save per se. Save as, and you notice it wants me to save it as a Z tool or ZTL. And let's go ahead and put this into broadcast miniatures, new Obgob Bob Bod. It saves it under the name of whatever is on the top subtool. Now, we're going to go to our bracers, go to geometry, dynamesh it at 256, and then we're going to subdivide it a couple times till it's pretty high resolution. And I'm going to sniffle because my nose is spoofed. Okay, now, what we're going to do here is we're going to give it a nice little deco. So I'm going to go back to the orb crack brush, make it a little bit bigger. And the first things first is I'm going to give it a nice deep cut. That's not a very nice cut. Anyway, I'm going to give it a nice deep cut. And I'm going to do it the same thing to over here. I'm going to start here and come down. Okay. Now I'm going to start drawing things in. And like has been my wont for the past several miniatures, each of these bracers will have something different. So for example, for this one, I'm going to actually draw on a hinge on the underside. So shrink this. Shrink this, get a better line. And there we go. A little bit up right here. And we're going to extract that at point 2. No. Delete that. And go back to him. We're going to turn off double and extract it. Accept. Draw. Select the braces again and draw. Then we're going to geometry, Dynamesh. Dynamesh at 120. No, not 128. That wait. Go bye. 256. Then we're going to smooth it very slightly on the sides. And then subdivide it a good bit and move. What we're going to do is we're going to move this to be a bit longer here. Oh, I forgot to change the focal shift to 0. Yeah, we're going to move it there. To there. And then we're going to basically shrink this a lot, and we're going to try to make it as perfectly lined up as possible. Then we're going to select, and then deselect a couple sections here. This might be too small to acknowledge, so we're gonna, just in case, we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. No, it's too big. There we go. And then we're going over here to deformation, and we're going to inflate in a negative direction. Just that's a bit too much. There. Frame out. And then we're going to subdivide that. So we got a little hinge on that one. I'll be honest, these tablets from Wacom last a very long time. I cannot say that for any other brand of tablet. I've got to warn you about that. Now, the way I made the scales on the Orc some months back, I think is probably the best way to go to make the scales on this Hobgoblin. And the way I did that was I went with a standard brush, maxed out the focal shift, made it nice and big, switched to drag dot, and chose an alpha. In this case, an alpha I had made some months back, many moons ago of a scale. And then just to see, alright, that's not big enough. First things first, I'm going to flip the alpha vertically. Then I'm going to make it bigger and stronger. Now, bigger. There we go. No. There we go. And move it over. Now those of you that have started playing with ZBrush, you'll notice how annoying it is when I say that it takes wherever you last drew as the new pivot point. You know what I mean? And what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm probably going to end up giving him a breastplate with the scale coming out from under it. So I'm going to start off just starting these scales. There we go. Now, if you have ZBrush, you can get alphas free on the Pixelogic download page, Gumroad, any number of places. There's a lot of places that people either sell or give away alphas that they've made. I would recommend that. You know, it's usually easy enough to find a free version of what you're looking for most situations. There might be specific situations where there is no free variant available anywhere, but for those situations it's actually probably better to make one yourself. Now the way these alphas work is everywhere that's white, the brush you're using applies at full strength. Everywhere that's black, the brush you're using doesn't apply. Everywhere that is gray, it partially applies. So the end result is, besides sniffing, you get a shape that you can repeatedly add on. And there we go. All right. Now, I don't know about you, but I just had it suddenly drop from for me it just suddenly dropped to 240p. No, I don't like that. I like being able to actually see what I'm doing if I happen to glance in here. And that's ignoring the whole little echoey thingy we got right here. So now, back to ZBrush. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add on a breastplate. No, I'm not. I'm going to make this scale is the only on the butt. He's going to have a bit of just regular cloth up top. And yes, scale is usually relatively erratic, so I can get away with this. There we go. Frame. Okay, now for boots. Well, first, now for soda. Anyway, for boots, we're going to be kind of high boots, like thigh boots almost. I'm just going to draw them up to there. Then draw it up to there. We are now going to extract them at 0.03. Except we're going to draw to unmask this, and then we're going to draw to unmask that. Now back on him. Oh, let's make sure. Okay, we didn't. Make sure we didn't double dip on the bracers. 256 Dynamesh. Now I'm going to shrink this down. I'm going to smooth the bottom. Well, 100% thank you. Smooth the bottom portion of these boots, so that blends in with the leg. Just the bottom portion. As you can see, when you smooth something, it shrinks, especially if it's rounded in any way, shape, or form, like these cylindrical bits on the legs here. To be fair about the whole moving of the pivot point, there's probably people who think that's the bee's knees. I mean, even now, without anything else, it looks more like boots than anything else. We're going to subdivide those a couple times, lower. And now we've got a few other things we can do, like I'm going to go ahead. We still have about 45 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and add in some detailing on the face. Detailing that might be a bit much for people with FDM printers, but for those of us with the resin, it can be a bit more fun. So let me lower the strength of that just a little bit. And now, first things first, we need to get some lines in those brows. Whoops. Yeah. And then a little bit down here. Gonna sharpen the frown line. See, I don't know why they call them laugh lines, because people are more apt to get them if they frown a lot instead of if they smile. You know? And then we're going to reduce that strength quite a bit. We're going to draw under the bottom lip. We're going to make it a lot bigger and draw a cleft in the chin. There we go. Now we're going to shrink it and, well, bring that intensity back up a bit, and we're going to draw draw in here. Kind of give it some flavor to those ears instead of being relatively generic. There we go. And now we're going to give him just a couple, make it really big and give him a little bit of wrinkling on the forehead. Oh, too strong. Give him a little bit of wrinkling on the forehead. There, we now have some character to that face. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to fuse with the boot tops. Nothing else is going to get fused yet. Geometry. Animesh. And turn it off. Bring and smooth out the bottom edges of this where the boots are. We're then going to start adding wrinkles to the boots, and then wrinkles to the shirt, and then a little bit of wrinkles to the leg area, because we all know those are pants and not bare legs. Okay, now we're going to use Slash to do this, and we're going to start off with a much smaller brush, but the same intensity. And on the feet, there's pretty much two main areas that wrinkles develop on boots, and that's... Actually, let's make it bigger. In the front, and then where the toes bend. Then we're going to sub and stronger. We're going to draw underneath, just a very light stress, underneath those wrinkles. last one was in the wrong spot. There we go. We're going to do something similar here, except we don't have to worry about gravity for these particular wrinkles. It's more of where's a good groove to put it. And we're going to do the same thing in the two areas where the back of the legs develop wrinkles on tall ones. Back here. And back here. We're then going to, once again, Z subtract and shrink and draw in division. And I don't mean the Division Bell, even though that's a really good album. But this time it's going to be below the wrinkles. Just like we tend to do with cloth. Okay. Then we're going to go with the inflate. Where did I don't have inflate chosen yet. Wow. As long as I've gone without using inflate. We're going to kind of let's see, feel my ankles, how they go. Okay, yeah. The outer ankle is a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter and a little bit lower. The inner ankle is a little bit stronger and a little bit higher. And when we frame out, those boots look a lot better. Just that little bit of work and those boots suddenly look a lot better. Now we're going up here, and we're going to start off with the standard brush. We're going to turn off our alpha and go back to dots instead of drag dots. We're going to drop our focal shift back to 0 and bring that intensity down to about 15. And we're going to draw on rather large wrinkles because this is, you know, crude cloth. And these wrinkles are mostly going to be the tension wrinkles from being belted up. We're also going to go ahead and smooth out this area right here. And then we're going to hit 1 a couple times to really smooth it out. Okay, and we're going to draw in our wrinkles. We're then going to kind of draw in some, well, smaller zigzag wrinkles. Same thing up here on the chest. We're going to give them some hanging wrinkles. And then bring them in to that. Okay, that's... Now, we're going to use the slash tool. We're going to drop that intensity quite a bit, and we're going to refine these wrinkles. Just with a on the bottom third or so of the wrinkle. The same thing here. We're going to come, well, you want to try, until you get used to doing it, you want to try to make certain that you don't do what I just did and try to draw with the wrinkle mostly off of the screen. Once again, we're drawing underneath the wrinkle. We're going to come back and deal with these tension wrinkles here in just a second. One thing to be aware of is a mistake that I made on a lot of my earlier miniatures that are actually still up there on the Thingiverse and on YouTube, and that's I made the wrinkles way too stick way too far out. And we're getting there. And then we have a little bit of a blank spot here. We're going to go ahead and just draw in some wrinkles. Now I'm going back to add and lowering the bottom. And we're going to draw on the sharp ends of these sharper bottoms of these wrinkles. And in just a second, you'll see how we have just turned, just by adding on some very basic, very simple, very almost cartoony wrinkles. We've made this look a lot more realistic. Now, one note. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to tvtropes.org. But there's a trope called reality is unrealistic. Yep. The sound you hear when the police sergeant fires his 9mm service pistol on TV is a 410 shotgun. The sound you hear when his partner pulls out his Ruger Super Warhawk and fires his .357 Magnum is a 12-gauge shotgun. Now, what we're going to do next, we're going to work on fixing this hand. So which means we start off at inflate. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to close up the interior of the fist with a smaller brush. At full blast, we're closing up that fist. Because we need it to be opaque, or not opaque, but completely and utterly watertight. There are some printers that won't have a problem, but we don't want to deal with just the best printers. We want everyone to be able to print out what they want to print. That's the reason why I started doing this show. That's the reason I started making my sculpts available for free. We want everyone to be able to make their characters, their creations. And when everyone can, I'm out of a job. Well, to be totally honest, I won't mind, because that'll take so long I'll probably be long dead. And if I'm not, hooey! I'll find something else to do. The only thing that'll kill this quote-unquote job for me is if people decide that they don't like playing role-playing games anymore and don't need miniatures. And now we are... Now one thing I've noticed is I need to grab this thumb and bring it in, because that thumb is way too far out. So we're going to go move topological, bring it up, shrink it back down because that's too much. There we go. Alright, now let's go back to inflate, and let's inflate these fingertips, or finger knuckles. This needs to be 14. Now we're going to look on top side of the index finger to see where we really need to put these knuckles, and it's to be one there, and one about here. And we just go ahead and finish filling in that spot. Ring finger in the same spot as the index finger, because it's almost the same length. Mid finger a bit longer, and pinky just a bit shorter. Then we kind of blend in the base of each finger, or not base, but blend in the knuckles with the lengths of each finger bone. You see, the rest of the sculpt can look amazing, but if the hands look like silly putty Vienna sausages, then it won't look right no matter what you do. It'll look cartoony. I mean, let's compare that difference. Actually, let's go ahead and very lightly add on the side of the palm. There we go. By closing off that thumb. Okay. Now, close it off right there. One thing about autosave, it sucks if it autosaves while you're in the middle of a stroke. And blend the bottom. Once again, we look on top, and we mark off about a third of the way down here and a third of the way down here. and then we make the knuckle bigger. Okay, and now we smooth the phalanges. And get them all said and done. By adding those bulbous parts on top of the knuckles, what we're doing is we're giving a direction for the smoothing to go. Otherwise, without marking off those knuckles, smoothing would just turn it into an even rounder blob. Now the next thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that these fingers stay separate. So we're actually going to use the slash tool and go back over the division between the fingers. You see, when we went and smoothed things out just then, we also smoothed out, to an extent, the division between these fingers. So by going over them with the slash tool, we can refine that back to where it was. I mean, you can see it right there on the front of the fist of this side, especially right down here. But let's go ahead and you can see it's a lot different now after doing that. And then draw deeper. Oh, I hate it when I do that. I'll start to stroke, and my finger will veer off to one side. By finger, I mean my index finger. And just refine that there. Okay, now let's go ahead and make the sword visible. We're going to make that sword a little bit more refined. We're going to subdivide it a couple times. Yeah, 368, that'll do. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw on our little moon shape onto the pommel. So we're going to start with inflate. And draw on our bone. And then we're going to lightly go back over it just to really emphasize the shapes and the forms. And then we're going to draw on, let's say, a crescent. And there we go. But on the back side, we're going to draw a moon. Moon, moon, great big moon, 2 eyes, nose, and a mouth. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to do it with masking. Actually, no, we need to subdivide it one more time. And then, actually, when I know what we need to do, Dynamesh it, 768, blur 0, Dynamesh.
Now we're going to draw it on. Yeah, there we go. A lot higher resolution for that. And let's go ahead and sharpen off these corners. And then we're going to mask, blur mask, and invert. Deformation, and we're going to inflate it out. And now we're going to go switch to the orb cracks. There we go. Just a little bit of a hidden nod to Warhammer there. And I do believe that's pretty much mostly it for a basic sergeant type. It's not going to be as detailed as that Dragonborn that I made. What am I putting this over here for? I don't keep that there anymore. Not after the cat's knocked it off too many times. There we go. Instead, what we have is a sergeant. His whole purpose in life is to make life hell for the infantry. So, I'm going to merge it all down to one. He's already got more detail than many miniatures that I've made in earlier episodes. But he's just a sergeant. Now, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to append Polymesh 3D. And I'm going to import from the bases the Rocky base, because that's where I'm putting all of these gobos. Now I'm going to go to deformation, rotate on Y. Remember, in the 3D printing, Z is up. In most 3D modeling packages, Y is up. Anyway, I'm just going to randomly rotate it. Then, come back here, I frame up on it, and I offset by Y. And want it just enough to where his feet are mostly into the ground. Now I'm going to offset it by X. Rotate it a bit this way. And there we go. He's on his base. So we go to the subtool and merge down. Here is Obgob Bob. Bob the Hobgoblin. And the next thing we do is we make him into a single solid mesh. Dynamesh. Okay. Now he's mostly done. The problem is we still have the whole problem of he's 1.5 million polygons. So we get up to Z plugin, and I hit this little button here, and it takes its place on the left. I go to Decimation Master. Now, earlier versions, and I think ZBrush Core, instead of hitting one of these buttons where it says presets, you have preprocess current. Once it's done, you manually enter in here how many polygons you want it to be and click decimate current. Well, we don't need that. We can go ahead and click 35K. Click. And as you can see the little, oh, there we go. That's a problem. It's supposed to have the orange thing go all the way across the screen, but instead it stopped early in and said, you know, oops, I don't know. Computing, please wait. So the end result was that. Let's try dynameshing again. Aha, I see 1,000 polygons. And it's looking good. 1.499 million polygons will soon be roughly 70,000. Yep, 70,578 polygons for Bob the Obgob. Now, I call it a hobgoblin. It would fit for your vision of your character. I'm still going to call him Bob the Obgob. Broadcast miniatures new. Obgob gob big. Okay. So having done that, let's go back to the main camera. Yay! So, Kim has left 5 minutes ago. She saw pretty much the entire thing. Alright, now, if you're not already subscribed, you know, the whole like, subscribe, bell icon, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, they got that out of the way. I'm supposed to do that by contract, I think. Not by contract with YouTube, but by contract with being a YouTuber. You're supposed to do that, you know? Yeah. Once again, I'd like to mention I am sponsored by Anycubic, and the effective result behind that is, we want you to print your miniatures with our machine. With the resin machine? Yeah! Okay. And the end result is some amazing prints. I love this thing. It's easy mode for printing miniatures. Now, I am going to be trying to get a hold of someone that I've been in contact with. One of these episodes coming up, one Tuesday or Thursday episode, I might have a guest instead of doing a sculpt, which means I will be doing a interview, and I'm going to try to basically compare and contrast sculpting these guys with sculpting physical miniatures using epoxy putty. No, Carlton. No, little buddy. Get on. Get on, little buddy. Yeah. Anyway. Hopefully we'll get some nice descriptions on the differences between techniques used for sculpting with putty and techniques used for sculpting in ZBrush or Sculptress or Blender. I have never actually used Blender sculpting. I don't know. Excuse me. But yeah. So here it's about 10 till 10, right about the usual 2-hour time point. And as you saw, that figure while not as detailed as, say, the Dragonborn that I did for Danny, is still considerably more detailed than that druid. I mean, it had all the scales around on its waistcloth, the wrinkles, the facial detailing I did, the wrinkles on the boots, and yet, same time period. Now, I'm going to belch like I just did. Yep. And I'm going to hold up my hand. First of all, I'd like to thank y'all for coming. And I hope y'all enjoyed the show and maybe learned something, or if not, then I'm sorry. And I'm going to count down from 5 to 1. When I get to 1, I'm going to end the broadcast. So, y'all got anything to say? Okay. Well, I am going to go ahead and start my countdown then. And that's going to be 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1. And now watching for it to come up as a 1 on my screen. Yay, lag. There it is. Good night, all.